When Dalton got into Duke law, it was as if someone in the family had won an Oscar. My parents rented out the community hall by the river, the one with the wraparound porch and the rented oak chairs they only use for weddings. They strung up a gold banner that read, "Dalton Does." Duke draped fairy lights across the ceiling and ordered a 2-tiered cake with tiny edible gavels perched on top. There were mini quiches, a meat-carving station, and a hired photographer who circled the room like we were all guests at some high-profile gala. I stood near the back with a sweating plastic cup of ginger ale, watching my cousin work the room like a man already running for office. Dalton had always had that kind of presence: pressed shirts, polished shoes, handshake ready. He wore a crisp navy blazer and one of those smiles that landed just the right amount of charm without effort. I counted at least 3 people who used the word brilliant when talking to him. My mom wore pearls. My dad gave a toast. People clapped. One woman dabbed tears during a story about how Dalton used to defend his classmates in kindergarten like a little lawyer in training. I laughed under my breath. Not because it was funny, but because I remembered that same year I was learning Photoshop on a school computer during lunch, designing fake cereal boxes for fun. No one told that story tonight. Dalton had a slideshow of his journey. Photos of mock trials, summer internships, framed certificates, debate team trophies. I watched him beam as people congratulated him as if he'd already passed the bar. No slideshow for me. No mention of the hours I'd spent juggling 2 part-time jobs and night classes just to finish my graphic design certificate. That didn't come with applause. That came with a nod and a casual, "You're good with computers, right?" When the crowd raised glasses and shouted his name, I didn't lift mine. I just looked around at all the smiling faces and tried to memorize how it felt to be in a room full of people celebrating a version of success I'd never belonged to. I wasn't bitter. Not exactly. Just tired of being the background. Later that night, I sat on the porch steps outside the hall and watched the parking lot empty. One by one, the cars rolled away into the dark, and I stayed there alone, ginger ale still warm in my hand, already knowing exactly how my news would be received. 2 weeks after Dalton's party, I walked into the house with the certificate folded neatly in my backpack. I'd just come from my last night class final project, turned in grade-posted instructor handshake still lingering on my palm. I didn't expect balloons. I didn't expect a toast or a cake, but maybe somewhere deep down I thought I'd at least get a moment. Mom was at the kitchen table scrolling through her phone, the same pair of reading glasses perched halfway down her nose. Dad was in the garage working on the busted leaf blower again, as if its redemption might restore some lost pride in a season gone wrong. I stood in the doorway for a beat longer than necessary. "I finished," I said, unzipping my bag. "I got my graphic design certificate. Passed everything." Mom looked up briefly, eyes skimming over my face like she was still halfway in the group chat she hadn't closed. "That's nice," she said. Then her gaze dropped back to the screen. "That printer upstairs is jamming again," Dad called from the garage. "Think you can take a look at it?" I folded the certificate back into my bag and slid it under my arm. No questions. No, can I see it? No, what's next? Just an errand and a line that felt like the emotional equivalent of a pat on the head. I walked up the stairs without saying anything else. Fixed the printer in under 10 minutes. It was a paper jam. It usually was. That night I sat on the edge of my bed and looked at the certificate again. Clean typography, a seal in the corner. My name in the middle, Callan Rivera, etched in a font they probably thought looked prestigious. It didn't feel prestigious. It felt like something I'd earned in a life where earning things didn't matter unless someone else decided they were worth clapping for. I slid it back into the drawer and closed it slowly. Something shifted in me after that. Not rage, not sadness. Just a quiet understanding that if I ever wanted to be seen, I'd have to stop waiting for the people who'd already decided not to look. When I was 9, I designed a cereal box. It wasn't for school. It wasn't for a contest. I just got this idea in my head. What if there was a cereal for kids who liked comic books? I called it Crunch Crusaders, sketched out a superhero trio on printer paper, and used Scotch tape to wrap it around an old box of Raisin Bran. I even hand-wrote the nutrition facts, complete with 100% daily value of creativity. I brought it to the dinner table like it was a prototype. My face flushed with pride, my fingers smudged with marker ink. Dad chuckled. "You've got a lot of time on your hands." Mom glanced over it, then asked if I'd finished my spelling homework. I said yes, even though I hadn't. That box mattered more. Later that week, Dalton performed at a violin recital at the community center. He scratched through Ave Maria with stiff fingers and a wrinkled dress shirt. Everyone clapped like he'd just debuted at Carnegie Hall. Grandma cried. Aunt Lorna brought a bouquet. Afterward, Mom said he was gifted. I overheard her tell someone I was quiet but helpful, like I was a good piece of furniture, reliable, never in the way. When Dalton won his first science fair ribbon, it got pinned to the fridge for months. When I won a school art contest with a handmade poster for Earth Day, Mom folded it up and stuck it in a drawer she later used to store batteries. At 12, I made a fake logo for our family's non-existent business Rivera Repairs. I photoshopped it onto an image of a van and printed it out, showed it to Dad like it was something real. He laughed and said, "You trying to make me work harder?" By high school, I'd stopped showing them things. I'd still make them band flyers, fan posters, fake app logos for things that didn't exist, but I kept them on a thumb drive in a shoebox under my bed. Dalton got extracurriculars. I got odd jobs. He got potential. I got, "You'll figure it out." Some kids grow up dreaming of becoming someone. I grew up quietly hoping to be noticed. And somewhere along the way, I started to understand that if I ever wanted to matter, it wouldn't come from showing them what I made. It would come from making something they couldn't ignore. I started freelancing under a different name, Cal Riven. It sounded cleaner, less tied to who I'd been, more like someone people would actually hire. I didn't have a portfolio worth bragging about, so I built one from scratch, mock logos, fake brands, stylized Instagram grids for cafes that didn't exist. I designed like it mattered even when no one else did. I posted my work on forums, design subreddits, Discord groups. Most days, nothing happened. Sometimes I'd get replies like, "Not bad, but too busy," or, "Do you even understand branding theory?" I told myself I was learning, and I was, slowly, quietly. Eventually, a small boutique out of Savannah reached out, said they loved my minimalist style and wanted a full rebrand logo packaging color palette. It was my first real job. I worked on it for 3 weeks straight. I skipped meals, pulled overnight shifts after clocking out of my day job. I poured myself into it like it was the only thing holding me together. They loved it, said it was perfect, said they'd wire payment the following Monday. They didn't. I followed up once, twice, then again a week later. No answer. I checked their social media. They were already using the new logo, new packaging, even my tagline. They had everything and I had nothing. I didn't eat that night. Just stared at my screen and watched the logo I'd made get hundreds of likes on their feed while I sat on the floor of my bedroom wondering if any of it had been worth it. I opened my portfolio and started deleting. Project mock-ups, color drafts, process videos. Each deletion felt like peeling off a layer of skin. When I got halfway through, I stopped. Not because I felt better, but because there was nothing left to feel. Then, out of nowhere, a message popped up on my design account. Lane Harper. I knew the name. She ran a boutique creative agency 2 counties over, known for clean conceptual branding. Her message was short. Just saw your cafe mock-ups and your work for that boutique. You've got raw instinct. Want to intern with us? I stared at the screen, still numb, and slowly reached for the mouse. Lane didn't talk much when we met. She didn't need to. She looked at my work like it mattered, and that alone was more than I was used to. Her studio was small, just a converted attic space above a bike shop, but it buzzed with energy I hadn't realized I was starving for. People tossed out ideas without apology. Everyone critiqued each other like the goal wasn't to win, but to sharpen. There were no gold stars, no empty compliments, just the work and the push to do it better. I started with the basics, resizing assets, mocking up pitch decks, shadowing on calls. Lane gave feedback fast and blunt, but always with a thread of belief. "This isn't bad," she'd say, "but I've seen you do better." That meant something. It made me want to show her that she was right to see more. 3 months in, she told me to stop hiding behind a pseudonym and build something real. "Make it your own," she said. "Put your name on it, or at least the name you'd put on a door someday." So I did. I bought a domain, mocked up a logo, and quietly launched Riven Creative. No announcement, no post, just a clean website and an email I checked every hour for a week. Nothing happened. Then, on day 10, a message came in. Local cafe, Asheville, owner named Meredith, said she needed a full rebrand menu design signage packaging, maybe even a mural. Said Lane had mentioned me in passing. I said yes, without thinking. For the next 5 weeks I lived inside that project. I met with Meredith every morning before my day shift, stayed up designing mock-ups every night. I sketched logo concepts on napkins, studied coffee packaging trends, like I was preparing for a dissertation. I painted a mural with a ladder that leaned more than it stood. My hands ached, my back cracked every morning. I loved all of it. When it launched, the cafe looked nothing like it used to. Customers commented. Meredith cried. She hugged me like I'd given her something more than visuals, like I'd translated something she hadn't had words for. Lane said, "Told you." I nodded, not because I believed her yet, but because I wanted to. I never told my parents. Not when the project launched, not when I got my first actual check, not even when someone tagged Riven Creative on a design blog. I kept it all to myself. It felt better that way. Until the night I came home for dinner and heard my name through a half-closed kitchen door. It was just a regular Sunday dinner, roast chicken, steamed carrots, too much butter in the mashed potatoes. I sat across from Dalton, who was home for the weekend and already updating my parents on his upcoming internship in D.C. He spoke with the kind of ease that made people listen like his words were pre-approved by something official. My parents hung on to every detail. Dad asked about legislation. Mom asked about suits. I mostly chewed and nodded. I knew the drill. After dessert, I offered to help with dishes. Mom waved me off. "You always do enough, sweetheart." I wasn't sure if it was a compliment or a placeholder. I was in the hallway when I heard them, my parents, in the kitchen just out of sight. "I just don't want him to waste his time," Dad said. His voice was lower now, the way it got when he was trying to sound like he cared without sounding too harsh. "Callan's good with his hands, but let's be honest, it's not a career." "He's creative," Mom added, like that explained everything. "Some people just need more time to figure things out." Their words didn't surprise me. That's what stung. They weren't angry. They weren't even dismissive on purpose. They were just certain. Certain I'd never be Dalton. Certain this thing I'd built, this work I was proud of, was just a phase I hadn't grown out of yet. I left before they realized I'd heard them. Didn't say goodbye. Didn't make a sound. On the drive home, I didn't turn on the radio. I just let the silence settle around me like it had always been there. Familiar, cold, honest. Somewhere around the county line, I said it out loud, just once, just for me. I'm not here to convince them. My hands tightened on the wheel. I'm here to become undeniable. And the next morning my phone buzzed with a new message, one that would change everything. It started with a photo. Someone snapped a shot of the cafe's new mural just after sunrise. The soft gold light hit the logo in a way that made it glow. Meredith posted it with a caption thanking the incredible local designer at Ribbon Creative. I saw the post go up around 6:30 a.m. By noon, it had over 1,000 likes and a few dozen shares. By the end of the week, a producer from a local TV segment called Small Business Spark reached out to Meredith. They wanted to feature the cafe talk about its transformation and highlight the branding work. Meredith insisted I be part of it. I resisted. She pushed. Lane told me not to overthink it. You did the work. Own it. So I did. They filmed on a Tuesday. 2 cameras quick interview a few shots of me sketching on an iPad in the corner booth. I answered a few questions about design philosophy, keeping it simple. 10 seconds, maybe 12. I didn't even say my full name, just Callan from Riven. The segment aired on Saturday morning. I watched it once alone in my apartment with a cold cup of coffee and my laptop balanced on my knees. The clip was short, but it was enough. The mural flashed across the screen, the logo settled in the corner, and my voice said, "Good design tells the truth." I just helped people find the words for it. I didn't tell my parents. I didn't tell Dalton. I didn't send the link to the family group chat. It wasn't out of spite, it just didn't feel like theirs. The next morning, my phone buzzed off the nightstand before sunrise. I ignored it. Then it buzzed again, and again. By the time I rolled over and checked, there were 12 missed calls. Mom, Dad, Dalton. 4 texts from Mom. "Why didn't you tell us we're so proud of you? Saw it on TV." "Wow, Callan. Let's talk soon, sweetheart." A single message from Dad. "That mural's something else. Didn't know you were doing all this." And from Dalton Bro. "You were on TV. That was actually legit." I stared at the screen for a long time, then turned it face down on the nightstand and slid out of bed. Later that afternoon, their car pulled into the parking lot outside Lane's studio. They showed up without warning, the white sedan pulling into the lot like it didn't belong next to the rusted pickup trucks and scattered bikes chained to the railing. I saw them through the glass door, Mom stepping out first in her clean navy coat, the one she wore to weddings and city meetings. Dad followed, more hesitant hands buried deep in his jacket pockets. I met them at the entrance, wiping paint from my palms with a towel that used to be white. "This is nice," Mom said, glancing around the shared space. Her voice lifted like she was trying to decide if she should be impressed. "So this is where you work?" "It's part of it," I said. "Lane's inside if you want to meet her." They didn't. Not really. They stayed near the front eyes, drifting from the logo on the wall to the sketches tacked on corkboards. Dad picked up a mock-up from the desk, nodded slowly. "You built all this?" he asked. "No," I said. "The elves handled it." He gave a short laugh, but it didn't stick. There was a pause long enough to make the air heavy. "We had no idea you were doing all of this," Mom said gently. "Why didn't you tell us?" I looked at both of them. They weren't being cruel. They weren't being fake. But it felt like they'd shown up because the world had clapped, not because they'd been listening. "You celebrated Dalton with pride," I said. "You gave me tasks." Mom's face tightened. Dad looked down. "I didn't tell you," I continued, "because I built this knowing you'd never clap until the neighbors did." They didn't argue. They just nodded. Quiet, embarrassed. Before they left, I walked them to the door. "You can visit," I said. "You can ask questions. You can even tell your friends." They waited, unsure of what came next. "But you don't get to frame this." They nodded again. That night I sat at my desk, reopened the cafe project folder, and began sketching something new. The cookout was small by design. No banners, no invites with embossed lettering. Just a few friends, some folding chairs, ribs on the grill, and music humming low from Lane's old Bluetooth speaker. We set it up in the lot behind the studio string lights taped to the fence coolers filled with whatever people brought. Lane showed up late with a bottle of red and a box of mismatched paper plates. "Didn't know if this was formal," she said, handing them to me. Judging by the aluminum tray full of corn dogs, I guessed right. Meredith from the cafe came too, holding something wrapped in tissue paper. "For your wall," she said. Inside was a framed photo of the cafe's front window, sunlight catching the logo just right. "Looks like it belongs there," she added. I smiled, thanked her, and set it on the windowsill behind the drink table. People came and went. Some brought partners, others brought stories about broken printers and picky clients. We laughed. We cursed about fonts. It felt like something rooted, something that didn't need validation, because it was already alive. Later that night, after the last beer was cracked and the grill had cooled to a faint glow, I sat on the porch behind the studio. My hands smelled like smoke and sauce. My shirt was stained with charcoal and ink. I didn't care. Bruno Lane's half-blind rescue mutt snored softly at my feet. The framed photo still sat behind me, untouched, clean. I checked my phone once. A notification blinked. Mom had commented on someone's story from the cookout. "Proud of you. Hope we're invited next time?" Dad, too. I slid the phone back into my pocket and leaned into the night. I used to draw just to be seen. Now I build so others feel seen too. And maybe that's what it's always been about, not the clapping, not the spotlight, but the stillness that follows when you've made something that can stand on its own.